The acid rain of Lumina-6 hissed against Vraxel's exoskeleton as he watched the human through his targeting optics. 3 heartbeats pulsed in his chest, each quickening as his finger hovered over the neurotoxin trigger. 1 shot, 1 death, 5 million credits. Simple mathematics for the galaxy's most feared Skyrillian assassin. But something was wrong. The human, Ezra Caney, sat alone in his modest habitation pod, hunched over a workbench, utterly exposed through the viewport. An embarrassingly easy kill. Yet Ezra wasn't constructing weapons or plotting galactic domination as Vraxel's client had claimed. Instead, his hands moved with surprising gentleness over a collection of broken mechanical creatures, discarded service droids that had been tossed away like garbage. Vraxel zoomed in, his triple-lidded eyes narrowing. The human was repairing them? No, more than that. He was improving them, adding components that Vraxel recognized as rudimentary emotion circuits. "There you go, little one," Ezra whispered to a small cleaning unit that whirred to life, its optical sensor blinking rapidly. Before it spun in what could only be described as a joyful circle, the assassin's primary heart skipped. In 15 stellar cycles and 73 confirmed kills across 17 systems, Vraxel had never hesitated, but he'd also never been lied to by a client. His comm unit pulsed. "Status update required, operative." Vraxel's mandibles clicked. In irritation, Commander Orvax of the Hegemony Special Operations expected confirmation of the target's elimination. The human supposedly possessed dangerous knowledge about Hegemony weapon systems, knowledge that could destabilize the careful balance of power in the Andromeda arm. Yet as Vraxel watched, Ezra reached into a battered cooling unit and retrieved a nutrition packet. He broke it in half and placed a portion outside his viewport. Moments later, a notoriously vicious Luminian scavenger beast cautiously approached, its barbed tail lowered in a rare display of non-aggression. "Same time tomorrow, Spike?" Ezra said through the reinforced glass. The creature made a sound that, impossibly, seemed affectionate. Vraxel's targeting system disengaged with a soft click as he made his decision. "Target location verified," he reported back. "Complications encountered. Surveillance continuing." The response was immediate and cold. "Negative. Eliminate target immediately, or replacement operative will be dispatched." Vraxel's third heart, the one that regulated his combat responses, surged with unexpected defiance. He had never questioned orders before, but he had also never been ordered to kill someone who tamed savage beasts and gave life to discarded machines. Through his scope, he watched as Ezra suddenly stiffened, reaching for something beneath his workbench. A weapon? No, a scanner. The human knew he was being watched. Instead of panic, Ezra's face showed only tired resignation. He stepped to his viewport and looked outward into the acid rain, as if he could see through the darkness to where Vraxel lurked. "If you're going to kill me," he said softly, "at least have the decency to tell me why." The words "shouldn't have" carried through the storm, but somehow they reached Vraxel with perfect clarity. And in that moment, the assassin made a decision that would change the course of 2 lives and, though neither yet knew it, the fate of the galaxy itself. Vraxel stepped out of the shadows, his camouflage field dissolving around him like mist, and approached the human's door. The habitat door slid open before Vraxel could announce himself. Ezra Caney stood in the threshold, remarkably calm for someone facing a Skyrillian assassin. His eyes, a startling shade of amber, showed no fear, only weary acceptance. "I figured someone would come eventually," Ezra said, stepping aside in silent invitation. "Didn't expect a Tier 1 Skyrillian operative, though. I must be more important than I thought." Vraxel's mandibles twitched in surprise. Few humans could identify his species, let alone his elite classification. "You recognize what I am?" "I recognize who you are, Vraxel Endoth," Ezra replied, turning his back to return to his workbench, either supremely confident or simply resigned to his fate. "Your toxin signature is distinctive. 3 confirmed kills on Proxima Station last cycle, all made to look like respiratory failures." The assassin entered cautiously, his 3 hearts beating arrhythmically. His neurotoxin injector remained charged but lowered. The hegemony believes you possess classified weapons intelligence. Ezra laughed bitterly, picking up a small droid that chirped at his touch. And you believed them? Look around, assassin. Do I look like I'm swimming in military secrets? The habitat was modest to the point of austerity. A single room filled with salvaged tech, droid parts, and precisely organized tools. The only luxury appeared to be an ancient paper book on a makeshift shelf. You were chief engineer on the hegemony warship Inevitable Justice, Vraxel stated flatly, until I refused to implement their planetary scorching protocols. Ezra nodded, his fingers absently stroking the chirping droid. Did they tell you that part? Or that those protocols would have left 3 billion sentients on Corvus 9 sterilized? Vraxel's outer eyelids blinked slowly. His client had omitted this detail. A heavy silence settled between them before Ezra spoke again. So what happens now? You complete your contract or? The question hung in the air as Vraxel's comm unit buzzed insistently. Without breaking eye contact with the human, he silenced it. What happens now? Vraxel said, his voice a low rumble. Is I make a choice. With fluid precision, he removed his toxin injector and placed it on the table between them. Then he extracted a small device from his utility belt and activated it. A blue field enveloped the habitat. Signal jammer, he explained. We have approximately 20 minutes before they realize I've gone dark. Ezra's composed facade finally cracked. Why would you risk? Because in 15 cycles, no client has ever lied to me about a target. Until now. Vraxel's inner eyelid flickered, the Skyrillian equivalent of intense focus. The hegemony will send another assassin, less discerning than myself. And you care because? Because you feed feral beasts and repair discarded droids when no one is watching, Vraxel said simply. These are not the actions of someone who deserves execution. For the first time, genuine emotion crossed Ezra's face, confusion giving way to cautious hope. I can disappear, Ezra suggested, already moving toward a hidden compartment in the floor. They will find you, Vraxel stated flatly. The hegemony's reach is long, and they consider you a significant threat. What then? I'm not exactly combat trained. Vraxel's mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he made a second decision that defied everything he had ever been. You don't need to be. I am. Ezra froze. What are you saying? I am saying, Vraxel replied, that as of this moment, I am officially deceased, killed while attempting to eliminate you, and you will gain a shadow, a shield. As if to punctuate his declaration, the proximity alarm suddenly blared. Both beings turned toward the visual feed showing a hegemony scout ship entering orbit. They're early, Vraxel observed, reaching for his toxin injector, not to use on Ezra but to prepare for their escape. Ezra's expression hardened with sudden resolve. I hope you're as good at protection as you are at assassination, Vraxel and Doth, because I think we're about to find out. The hegemony scout ship unleashed a barrage that shattered the night sky of Lumina 6. Vraxel shoved Ezra to the floor as incendiary rounds tore through the habitat's ceiling, raining superheated debris around them. They're not even trying for subtlety, Ezra gasped, crawling toward the workbench. The hegemony rarely does when betrayed, Vraxel replied, his exoskeletal plates shifting to combat configuration. What are you doing? We need to evacuate. Not without them. Ezra reached for the small collection of refurbished droids, quickly stuffing them into a weathered pack. Vraxel's mandibles clacked in exasperation. We are being hunted by elite operatives, and you're concerned about... They're sentient. Ezra cut him off, securing the pack. I won't leave them to die. Not negotiable. Something long dormant stirred in Vraxel's third heart, not irritation but an unfamiliar respect. While tactically unsound, the human's loyalty to his creations revealed an integrity the assassin found unexpectedly compelling. 4 minutes until breach, Vraxel calculated, retrieving a hidden arsenal from compartments in his exosuit. Do you have an escape craft? Ezra's lips curved into a grim smile. Better. I have a prototype. He pressed his palm against a seemingly solid wall, which melted away to reveal a narrow passage. They hurried through as the bombardment intensified, emerging into a small hangar where a sleek vessel waited, obviously salvaged but extensively modified. The improbability, Ezra announced with understated pride. Built from scrapped hegemony interceptor parts. She's not pretty, but she's fast and invisible to standard scanners. Vraxel's outer eyelids widened in genuine surprise. You constructed this from discarded components? Like my droids, Ezra confirmed, already initiating launch protocols. The hegemony throws away remarkable things, including talented engineers, Vraxel thought but didn't say. The ship hummed to life just as the hangar door exploded inward. 3 armored hegemony soldiers burst through, weapons raised. Get us airborne, Vraxel commanded, his body moving with lethal precision as he engaged the intruders. What followed was a dance of death that even Ezra, no stranger to violence in the outer colonies, found breathtaking. Vraxel moved like liquid shadow, his 4 arms wielding weaponry with surgical accuracy. The first soldier fell to a toxin dart in the neck joint of his armor. The second received a vibroblade between helmet seams. The third managed to fire a single errant shot before Vraxel separated his head from his shoulders. Vertical launch initiated, Ezra called over the carnage, his focus absolute on the controls. Brace for. The ship rocketed upward through a concealed exit in the habitat's roof, the G-forces pressing them into their seats as Lumina 6's toxic atmosphere gave way to the void of space. Hegemony destroyer at 3 Mark 7, Ezra reported tensely. Weapons hot. Can we outrun them? Vraxel asked, sliding into the co-pilot's chair, his exosuit still dripping with the purplish blood of their pursuers. We can do better. Ezra's fingers danced across the controls. We can disappear. The improbability shuddered as experimental engines engaged. Space itself seemed to bend around them. Then, impossibly, the stars stretched and snapped back as they jumped to a velocity Vraxel had never experienced. What was that? The assassin demanded, all 3 hearts racing. Quantum displacement drive, Ezra explained, his eyes fixed on readouts. My own design. We didn't just move through space. We temporarily existed elsewhere. Vraxel stared at the human with new understanding. This is why the hegemony fears you. Not because of what you know about their weapons, but because I can build better ones, Ezra finished grimly. Ones they can't control. As the ship stabilized, in an unmapped sector of space, the implications hung between them. Ezra Kane wasn't merely a principled engineer. He was perhaps the most dangerous human in the galaxy, and Vraxel had just become his protector. 2 standard months into their unlikely partnership found Ezra and Vraxel on Karthos Station, a sprawling hive of commerce and deception at the edge of chartered space. The station's infamous neutrality made it both sanctuary and trap. No authorities would arrest them, but neither would any intervene if they were discovered. They had established a cramped workshop in the station's forgotten maintenance level. While Ezra worked on refining his displacement drive, Vraxel maintained vigilant security and gathered intelligence on hegemony movements. You're favoring your left side again? Ezra observed without looking up from the delicate circuitry spread before him. One of his refurbished droids, M4X, a repurposed medical unit, hovered attentively nearby. Vraxel paused in his combat exercises. The injury is inconsequential. Let M4X examine you, Ezra insisted, finally raising his eyes. Skyrillian physiology isn't his specialty, but he's adaptive. I do not require. You require a functioning exoskeleton to keep both of us alive, Ezra countered, his tone leaving no room for argument. That hit you took on to Solus compromised your carapace integrity. Vraxel's mandibles twitched with reluctant acquiescence. He had never permitted another being to treat his injuries. Assassins who required medical attention typically didn't survive long enough to receive it. Yet here he was, allowing a reformed medical droid to scan his damaged plates while its human creator watched with unconcealed concern. The microfractures are expanding, M4X reported in its soothing tone. Recommend immediate application of calcium silicon bonding agent and 24 hours of immobilization. Ezra was already retrieving the compound from their supplies. I can modify it to match your specific exoskeletal composition if you'll finally tell me what planet you hatched on. Skyrillians don't hatch, Vraxil corrected, a hint of amusement in his multi-toned voice. We emerge fully formed from crystalline gestation chambers. You're deflecting again, Ezra noted, mixing the compound. Vraxil remained silent as M4X began applying the bonding agent. His reluctance to share personal history wasn't merely professional caution, it was the inertia of a lifetime spent in isolation. Connection meant vulnerability, yet somehow this human had bypassed his defenses. Tyrelia, he finally said. Southern mineral basins. Ezra's hands stilled momentarily. Tyrelia was devastated in the hegemony's expansion campaign 30 cycles ago. 32, Vraxil corrected softly. I was the only survivor from my brood complex. The hegemony found me useful, a rare specimen with evolutionary adaptations suitable for their purposes. Understanding dawned in Ezra's eyes. They didn't hire you. They created you. They believed they did, Vraxil acknowledged, his inner eyelid flickering with suppressed emotion. And I let them believe it while I perfected my skills waiting for the opportunity to. A proximity alarm cut him short. Both immediately tensed, weapons drawn before the sound had faded. Two signatures approaching maintenance shaft Delta, Ezra whispered, checking the scanner. Moving with purpose. Vraxil moved to a defensive position despite his injury. Identities? Unknown, but their movement pattern suggests military training. They waited in practiced silence as footsteps approached. Then, unexpectedly, a voice called out, Engineer Caney? We come under banner of truce. Ezra and Vraxil exchanged guarded looks. Identify yourselves, Ezra demanded. Resistance operatives, came the reply. We have intelligence about the hegemony's next move, and a proposition you'll want to hear. Vraxil's toxin injector hummed to life. It could be a trap. Everything in this galaxy is a trap, Ezra responded, his expression hardening with resolve. The question is whether we're finally going to spring one of our own. As the door slid, open to reveal their visitors, both Ezra and Vraxil realized they had reached a crucial juncture. No longer simply fugitives, they were about to become something far more dangerous. Conspirators. And somewhere deep in his third heart, Vraxil felt an unfamiliar sensation. Purpose beyond survival. The resistance operatives, Lysithea Voss and her silent partner known only as Meridian, brought alarming intelligence. The hegemony had developed a stellar compression weapon based on corrupted versions of Ezra's earlier work. Their target, the densely populated Arcadian system, home to billions of beings and strategically vital to maintaining independence from hegemony control. They've accelerated the timeline, Lysithea explained, her cybernetically enhanced eyes shifting through spectrums as she spoke. Deployment in 14 standard days. Once Arcadia falls, 7 other systems will capitulate immediately. Ezra stood absolutely still, horror etching lines into his face. Those designs were theoretical, safety-locked. They couldn't possibly. They have, Meridian spoke for the first time, their voice modulated to perfect neutrality. And they've integrated Skyrillian bioadaptive components. All eyes turned to Vraxil, whose exoskeleton had darkened, the involuntary response of his species to extreme emotion. My genetic material, he realized aloud. The medical examinations they performed after difficult missions. They weren't treating me. They were harvesting. Lysithea nodded grimly. Skyrillian adaptive tissue is the perfect interface between organic and mechanical systems. Your biology makes the weapon possible. The revelation hung in the recycled air of their hideout like a physical presence. Vraxil had not merely been a tool of the hegemony, he had been their unwitting collaborator in potential genocide. The assassin moved with sudden, startling speed, slamming his fist into the bulkhead with enough force to dent the metal. I will dismantle them, he hissed, all three hearts pounding visibly beneath his exoskeleton. Every last one. Ezra stepped forward, placing a steady hand on Vraxel's trembling shoulder plate, a gesture that would have been unthinkable months ago. Not alone, you won't. The tension held for several heartbeats before Vraxel's posture relaxed incrementally. What is your proposition? He asked the Resistance operatives. Meridian activated a holographic projector revealing a massive hegemony, research facility suspended in orbit around a dying star. This is Nexus Station. The compression weapon is there along with all research data. We need you to destroy it, Lysithea continued. Not just the weapon, all record of its existence. Make it so they have to start from scratch. Ezra shook his head in disbelief. That station has defense systems that would vaporize a battle fleet. How exactly? Your displacement drive, Meridian interrupted. Combined with Vraxel's infiltration expertise, we can get you inside. Vraxel and Ezra exchanged a look of perfect understanding, communicating volumes without words. A bond, forged through months of shared danger and growing trust. If we do this, Ezra said carefully, it won't just be sabotage. It will be a declaration of war. Lysithea's artificial eyes shifted to deep crimson. The war began long ago, Engineer Caney. The hegemony simply never bothered to inform the rest of us. Later, as they prepared the improbability for what might be its final journey, Ezra found Vraxel in the cargo hold, methodically checking his extensive arsenal. I did not know, the Skyrillian said without preamble, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. About my tissue. About my complicity. You were a victim, not an accomplice, Ezra replied firmly. And now you're choosing to be something else. Entirely. Vraxel's inner eyelid flickered rapidly. What am I choosing to be? Ezra smiled, the expression somehow both weary and determined. A redeemer. Like those droids I rebuild, taking the broken pieces of your past and constructing something magnificent. The assassin considered this, his three hearts beating in a new synchronized rhythm. We may not survive this mission. Probably not, Ezra agreed with surprising calm. But sometimes, Vraxel, the value of a life isn't measured in its duration, but in its purpose, Vraxel finished, an unfamiliar sensation spreading through his consciousness. Not quite hope, not quite resolve, but something infinitely more powerful than either. As they made final preparations, the former assassin realized that in sparing Ezra Caney's life, he had ultimately saved his own. The improbability emerged from displacement at the exact coordinates Meridian had provided, a blind spot in Nexus Station's sensor grid nestled in the corona flares of the dying star. Heat warnings immediately blared across the ship's systems as radiation levels spiked to near-lethal thresholds. We have 17 minutes before shield failure, Ezra announced, his face illuminated by emergency lighting. After that, we'll be cooked instantly. Vraxel secured the last of his weaponry, his exoskeleton now enhanced with the modifications Ezra had designed. Lightweight armor integrated with his biological plates, making him even more lethal. The infiltration point? Maintenance airlock, J-17. Minimal security because of the radiation exposure. No one expects an approach from this vector because it's suicide. Then we should not disappoint them by surviving, Vraxel replied with grim humor that would have been unthinkable months earlier. They made the crossing in pressure suits, using maneuvering thrusters to propel themselves toward the massive station. Behind them, the improbability maintained position. M4X and the other droids prepared to execute their part of the desperate plan. The airlock yielded to Ezra's countermeasures with surprising ease. Once inside, they shed their radiation suits and moved with practiced stealth through the labyrinthine corridors of humanity's potential doom. Research core is 3 levels down, Ezra whispered, consulting the schematics Lysithea had provided. Weapon deployment chamber is adjacent. Vraxel's sensory appendages twitched. Something is wrong. Security presence is minimal. Maybe we're just lucky for once? The Skyrillian's mandibles clicked in disagreement. In my experience, Apparent good fortune is usually a trap, finished a familiar voice. Commander Orvax stepped from a concealed doorway, flanked by elite hegemony guards. The aging officer's augmented eye glowed with malicious satisfaction. Operative in doth. How disappointing to find my most effective asset has become a defective liability. Vraxel shifted imperceptibly, positioning himself between Ezra and the newcomers. You lied about Engineer Caney, about the mission parameters. Of course I did. Orvax sneered. Had you known his true value, your ridiculous sense of honor might have interfered, as indeed it did. Ezra's hands moved slowly toward the specialized disruptor hidden at his belt. You've weaponized my research, perverted it, improved it, Orvax corrected. Your moral limitations were always your weakness, Caney. Imagine refusing to apply your genius because of something as trivial as civilian casualties. Those casualties have names, Ezra replied, his voice hard as titanium. Families, dreams. Orvax's expression conveyed utter boredom. Spare me your sentimentality. Your resistance friends are already dead, by the way. Did you really think we wouldn't detect their communication with you? Something cold and terrible settled in Vraxel's third heart. When does the weapon deploy? Orvax smiled thinly. It already has. The compression wave is currently traveling through subspace toward Arcadia. Arrival in approximately 43 minutes. You're too late. The revelation should have shattered them. Instead, Ezra and Vraxel exchanged a single look of perfect understanding. Now, M4X, Ezra said quietly into his communicator. Across the station, in the supposedly secure hangar where the improbability had been impounded, the refurbished medical droid and his companions executed their programming. The ship's experimental displacement drive activated, not to move the vessel but to create a localized quantum field that extended throughout Nexus Station. Alarms screamed to life as Orvax's augmented eye widened in realization. What have you done? Created a quantum entanglement between the compression wave and this station, Ezra explained, a fierce pride in his voice. Whatever happens to Arcadia will happen here first. Poetic, wouldn't you say? Pure fear replaced Orvax's confidence. Terminate the wave. Override code Epsilon 97. Too late, Vraxel interrupted, his multi-tonal voice almost gentle. Your weapon travels faster than your commands. The station shuddered as impossible energies began to warp its structure. Reality itself seemed to bend around them as the compression effect rebounded through the entanglement. You'll die too, Orvax gasped as his guards fled in panic. We made our peace with that possibility, Ezra acknowledged. Then, turning to Vraxel, the escape pods would never clear the effect radius, the Skyrillian finished. But the improbability might with its displacement capability. They ran, leaving Orvax screaming orders into the void as the station began to implode around them. Emergency bulkheads slammed down as atmospheric integrity failed. They cut through maintenance shafts, Vraxel's enhanced strength tearing open sealed passages, Ezra's technical genius bypassing lockdowns. When they reached the hangar, the improbability was already coming apart at its seams, the displacement drive glowing with unnatural energies. M4X, Ezra called. The medical droid emerged from the ship, damaged but functional. Drive at critical tolerance, 97% probability of catastrophic failure upon activation. And our survival chances if we stay? Vraxel asked. 0. M4X replied simply. Ezra paused only long enough to collect his loyal droids before they boarded the failing vessel. As he initiated launch sequences, his hands moved with the same careful precision he had once applied to repairing discarded mechanicals in his modest habitat on Lumina 6. If we attempt displacement during compression, he began. I know the risks, Vraxel replied, taking the co-pilot seat. But I would rather die attempting the impossible with you than succeed at anything without you. The human's amber eyes widened at this unprecedented declaration from the normally stoic Skyrillian. Then a smile of genuine warmth spread across his face. Let's rewrite the laws of physics then. As Nexus Station collapsed into a singularity behind them, The improbability engaged its displacement drive. Space twisted. Reality screamed in protest, and the laws of the universe bent to the will of a brilliant human engineer and his unlikely protector. The compression wave heading toward Arcadia dissipated harmlessly as its source point collapsed. Billions of lives continued, unaware of how close they had come to extinction, or of the sacrifice that had saved them. But sacrifice was not the end of this story. 3 standard months later, on an uncharted world far from hegemony influence, a damaged but healing ship materialized in the clear sky above an untouched valley. Its hull bore the scars of impossible physics and desperate courage. Inside, a human and a Skyrillian emerged from emergency cryopreservation, brought back to consciousness by the faithful ministrations of a refurbished medical droid. It worked, Ezra whispered in disbelief, looking out at the pristine landscape below. Your navigation calculations actually worked. I told you I was proficient in more than killing, Vraxel replied, his exoskeleton gleaming with new growth, where it had been damaged. As they stepped onto the soil of their new home, the former assassin reflected on the strange path that had led him here. He had been created as a weapon, molded into death's perfect instrument, yet in choosing to spare one human life, he had found something he never knew existed, a purpose greater than himself. What will we build here? Ezra asked, already scanning the surroundings with the inventor's eternal optimism. Vraxel's 3 hearts beat in perfect harmony as he looked not at the landscape, but at the human beside him, the unexpected catalyst of his transformation from shadow to shield. Whatever we choose, the Skyrillian answered. That is the true power of being free.